Clara Johnson believed in routine. For 10 years, her dialysis schedule never changed. Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7:30 a.m. The clinic was 15 minutes from her apartment on the west side of town. She always arrived early, wearing the same blue cardigan and carrying her small notebook where she wrote everything: blood pressure, medication times, fluid levels, even what she ate for breakfast. Her nurse used to tease her. "Miss Johnson, you could run this place with that notebook." Clara would smile. "I don't need to run it. I just need it to run on time." But that Friday morning, the rhythm broke. When she reached the clinic, the lobby was busier than usual. A young receptionist with a headset was typing quickly behind the counter. Clara gave her a small wave and said, "Good morning, Johnson, Clara, 7:30. The woman frowned, scanning the monitor. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't see your name on the list." Clara laughed softly. "You probably just missed it. Been coming here 3 times a week for years." The woman clicked again. Nothing came up. "I think the system must have updated overnight. It says your appointment was canceled." "Canceled? How can it be canceled? I never canceled it." The receptionist looked uneasy. "Maybe the schedule rotated? We started using a new automated program last month. It moves people around based on availability." "Gripped the counter?" "Miss, my blood doesn't know about your updates. I need that machine today." The woman nodded quickly. "Let me check with the nurse manager. Please take a seat." Clara sat in the waiting area, the familiar beeping of dialysis machines drifting from the treatment room. The sound usually comforted her. Steady, rhythmic, proof that life was being cleaned and returned. But that morning, it felt distant, almost taunting. She looked at her watch. 7:45. Her usual chair would already be occupied by now. 20 minutes later, a nurse named Tessa came out. "Miss Johnson, I'm so sorry for the confusion. It looks like the computer reassigned your slot." "Reassigned? To who?" "To a new patient. The system thought you weren't coming today." "Thought I wasn't coming? I've never missed a session in my life." Tessa nodded helplessly. "I know, but the new program predicts attendance based on past patterns. Things like travel time, check-in delays, even zip code." "Zip code?" Clara repeated. "What does my zip code have to do with my kidneys?" Tessa sighed. "It's complicated, ma'am. The computer tries to reduce no-shows." "Well, it just created one," Clara said, her voice sharp. By 8:30, she was still waiting. Her chest felt tight. The longer she sat, the heavier her arms became. Dialysis wasn't something she could delay. Without it, toxins built up, making her dizzy, nauseated, and short of breath. Angela, her daughter, called to check in. "Mama, are you finished yet?" Clara hesitated. "They say I don't have an appointment today." "What? Do they know what that means?" "I know what it means," Clara said quietly. Angela's voice rose. "Don't move! I'm on my way!" By the time Angela arrived, her mother was pale and sweating. She marched to the counter. "My mother's life depends on those treatments. You better find her a chair right now!" The nurse manager came out, face tense. "We're working on it, ma'am. The schedule is automated. It locked her out this morning." "Locked her out?" Angela repeated. "Like she's an account you can reset?" The manager lowered his voice. "The system assigned her as low compliance risk. That means she's less likely to attend, so her slot can be reallocated if demand is high." Angela stared at him. "Low compliance? She's never missed a session." The man nodded awkwardly. "It could be an error from the database. Maybe one late check-in flagged her profile." Angela clenched her fists. "So the machine assumes she's unreliable because a bus ran late one day and no one double-checks that?" The manager didn't answer. At 9:15, they finally found her an open station. Clara settled into the recliner, weak but relieved. As the nurse started her treatment, she whispered, "Thank you, Lord." Angela stood beside her, still furious. "Mama, we're not letting this go." Clara gave a tired smile. "I don't want trouble, baby. I just want my seat back." Angela shook her head. "This isn't about a seat. It's about who the system thinks deserves to sit in it." As the machine hummed, Clara watched the ceiling tiles blur. For the first time in years, she didn't feel safe in the place that kept her alive. She whispered under her breath, "The machine said I wasn't coming. But here I am, still fighting to be counted." When Angela drove her mother home that afternoon, she couldn't stop replaying what the clinic manager had said. Low compliance risk. It was a phrase that sounded polite, but she knew it carried a cruel weight. The next morning, she made a cup of coffee, sat at her kitchen table, and opened her laptop. If the system had almost cost her mother's life, she wanted to know exactly how it worked. She found the name of the company printed on the brochure Clara kept in her dialysis folder. MediFlow Predictive Scheduling. A tagline ran across the top, "Efficiency that saves lives." Angela clicked through their website. It promised to optimize dialysis chair time, reduce last-minute cancellations, and improve clinical performance. But hidden deep in the FAQ page was one sentence that caught her eye. "Our AI scheduling model automatically reallocates time slots using attendance history, insurance type, and travel distance to maximize operational efficiency." Insurance type, travel distance, attendance history? Angela whispered, "So they rank patients by how convenient they are." She printed the page and took it to the clinic the next day. The receptionist looked nervous when Angela placed the paper on the counter. "Does this sound familiar to you?" The woman bit her lip. "Yes, that's our new system. We started last quarter." "Who checks if it's right?" "The computer does, ma'am." Angela leaned forward. "And who checks the computer?" The woman hesitated. "I guess management?" "So no one," Angela said. Later that afternoon, Angela sat with her mother at the kitchen table. Clara still looked weak from the long delay the day before. "Mama, do you remember missing any appointments recently?" "Only once," Clara said. "The bus broke down in February. I was an hour late, but I still came." Angela nodded. "That's what did it. The system counted it as a missed session. One mistake, and it branded me unreliable," Clara said quietly. Angela showed her the printed page. "They're using data like your zip code and insurance to predict who will show up." Clara frowned. "So because I live where I live and have the plan I can afford, I'm worth less to them?" Angela didn't answer. She didn't need to. That evening, Angela called her brother Marcus, a software engineer. He listened carefully as she explained everything. Marcus said, "It's predictive modeling. They feed the program all this data, demographics, payment history, attendance, and it learns who they think is dependable. But the problem is, it learns from bias." Bias? Yeah, if most of the training data comes from private clinics in wealthier areas, the system starts assuming those patients are more reliable. So when it sees someone with Medicaid or a high-risk zip code, it automatically predicts lower attendance. Angela sighed. "So the machine thinks my mother's too poor to be punctual." Marcus's voice grew heavy. "It doesn't think, Angela. It just repeats what the world taught it." The next morning, Angela returned to the clinic with her mother's notebook in hand. She opened it on the counter. "See this?" she said to the nurse. "Every appointment, every reading, every note. 10 years, never missed. How can any computer look at this woman and call her unreliable?" The nurse looked embarrassed. "I wish I could fix it, but the system controls scheduling. We have to request supervisor approval to override it." "So even when you know it's wrong, you still have to ask permission?" The nurse nodded. "They say it keeps everything objective." "Objective," Angela repeated. "That's just another word for distant." That evening, Clara sat by her window watching the buses go by. She thought about all the years she had shown up, tired, sore, sometimes scared, but always there, She had never asked for special treatment, only fairness. She whispered to herself, "I showed up, but the system didn't." Predictive systems promise efficiency, but they learn from history, and history has never been neutral. When numbers decide who's reliable, trust becomes a privilege, not a right. Clara opened her small notebook and wrote slowly. Machines can schedule time, but they can't measure commitment. Then she underlined the words twice. Next, Clara and Angela discover exactly what the computer got wrong. How a single late bus and a single zip code nearly erased a lifetime of dependability. Angela couldn't let it go. The word low compliance echoed in her head every time she looked at her mother. Clara had done everything right, every appointment, every pill, every diet rule, but one machine decided she wasn't dependable. She called the clinic manager again and asked to see the report that labeled her mother that way. After a long pause, he said, "That information is internal, ma'am." "Internal to who?" Angela asked. "You used it to take away her care." He sighed. "I'll see what I can share." 2 days later, she received an email with a spreadsheet attached. It was filled with codes and numbers that looked meaningless until she found her mother's name in a column marked Attendance Risk Index. Beside it was a score, 0.72, flagged in yellow. Angela scrolled down and found a small note at the bottom. Derived from no-show model based on 12-month historical attendance data, zip code, and payment record. She read it 3 times. Payment record, zip code. The next morning, she brought the printout to Clara. "Mama, this is what the machine used. It says you live in a high-risk area." Clara looked confused. "High risk of what?" "Not showing up, apparently." Clara frowned. "But I've shown up for 10 years." Angela nodded. "It doesn't see that. It sees your address. The bus line through our zip code has one of the highest delay rates in the city. It probably used that as a signal." "So I get punished for where the city put the bus stop?" Clara said softly. Angela decided to dig deeper. She found the technical paper behind the scheduling program on the company's website. It proudly described its predictive attendance algorithm, trained on 200,000 patient records. The data set, it said, came mostly from private clinics in suburban areas. She highlighted one sentence. Data from high-variance urban centers was excluded to improve model stability. She whispered, "They threw out everyone like my mother to make the computer look smarter." That afternoon, Angela met with Tessa, the nurse who had helped her mother. Tessa looked tired. "The system's wrong more than people think," she admitted. "But we can't argue with it. Every chair has to be used, and the computer decides who's next." Angela asked, "What happens if you override it?" Tessa glanced down the hall before answering. "We get flagged. Too many overrides, and management says we're being inefficient." "So you choose between breaking policy or breaking someone's heart," Angela said quietly. Tessa nodded quietly.
A week later, Clara's church friends came to visit. When Angela told them what happened, one woman said, "My cousin goes to a clinic across town. She missed a session because the computer changed her slot too." Another said, "It happened to my neighbor. They said her insurance didn't confirm fast enough." Clara looked around the room. "So it's not just me." Angela nodded. "The system's not personal. It's patterned." That night, Clara sat up late with her notebook. She flipped through the pages of 10 years' worth of data. Neat handwriting, check marks, little stars on days she'd felt proud. All proof that she'd shown up, over and over. She whispered, "The computer missed the most important part, the human part." She turned to a blank page and wrote, "The bus was late once. The system still remembers. But it forgets the hundreds of times I was early." The next day, Angela brought her mother's notebook to a meeting with the clinic's regional director. She placed it on his desk. "This is my mother's record. 10 years of consistency. Do you see one missed session here?" He flipped through the pages, silent. She continued, "Your algorithm erased her spot because of one line of code that thought our zip code meant we were unreliable. How many others did it erase the same way?" The director looked at her gravely. "I don't know, but I'll find out." Angela leaned forward. "You'd better, because next time someone might not make it to their next treatment." The algorithm didn't fail because it was evil. It failed because it was blind. Blind to context, to effort, to the people behind the data. When numbers replace stories, the math can be perfect and still be wrong. That night, Clara wrote one more note in her book. "The bus is late. The system adjusts. But I am still here, early, present, alive." She closed the notebook gently and said, "Maybe next time it'll see me." Next, Angela confronts the clinic's management and discovers that what happened to her mother wasn't an accident. It was company policy, written to favor profit over patients.
Angela's call to the regional director led to a meeting 2 days later. She brought her mother's worn blue notebook, the spreadsheet, and the printout with the company's policy. Clara insisted on coming too, though she still looked pale from her last treatment. The conference room was bright and cold, with a single framed quote on the wall: "Innovation through efficiency." The director, a man in his 50s with a practiced smile, greeted them. "Miss Johnson, we're sorry for your trouble. Our goal is to serve all patients equally." "Equally?" Angela repeated. "Then why did the system delete my mother's slot?" He glanced at the folder she had placed in front of him. "The algorithm sometimes reassigns time based on predicted attendance. It helps us prevent open chairs." "So you cancel people who might cancel?" Angela said flatly. He cleared his throat. "We try to maximize use." "You mean profit," Clara said quietly. The man hesitated, his face softening. "Ma'am, that's not our intention." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Your intention doesn't clean my blood." Angela flipped open the company's public policy she had downloaded the night before. It said, "Facilities must comply with predictive scheduling parameters to maintain reimbursement efficiency." She pointed to the sentence. "What does reimbursement efficiency mean?" The director shifted uncomfortably. "It's part of our agreement with the software vendor. If we follow the algorithm schedule, we get faster insurance payments." Clara looked at him. "So the computer saves you money by risking my life." The man sighed. "I understand how it sounds. It doesn't just sound that way, it is that way," Angela interrupted. After the meeting, Angela went to see Tessa, the nurse. She told her what the director said. Tessa nodded sadly. "That's why we can't override the schedule without approval. Every override affects their numbers." "So even if you know it's wrong, you have to obey it?" "Pretty much," Tessa said. "The computer runs the clinic, not us." Angela clenched her jaw. "That's not medicine, that's management."
A week later, a patient council meeting was held at the clinic. Angela and Clara attended, along with a dozen others. Some came in wheelchairs, some with oxygen tanks. They had all faced strange cancellations or sudden schedule changes. One older man said, "They told me I skipped an appointment last month. I was here. I just signed in on the wrong screen." Another woman added, "The same thing happened to me. They said my insurance was pending and gave my chair to someone else." Angela stood up. "Do you see a pattern here? The system isn't predicting attendance, it's predicting convenience. The room went quiet. Then Clara said softly, "It's not a bug, it's a rule." The next morning, Angela wrote an email to the Department of Health's Patient Advocacy Division. She attached every file, every note, and one line from her mother's notebook. Machines shouldn't decide who gets to live another week. Within days, she received a reply. The department confirmed that Mediflow's predictive scheduling model was under review for potential discrimination based on socioeconomic data. When Angela read the message aloud, Clara smiled faintly. Maybe the system will finally have to explain itself. At the clinic, things began to change quietly. The staff whispered about the investigation. Tessa told Angela, "They're nervous. Corporate sent a memo reminding us to use human judgment when necessary." Angela raised an eyebrow. "When necessary?" Tessa shrugged. "I guess they finally remembered we have hearts." That evening, Angela sat beside her mother's bed. "Mama, I think they're scared." "Good. Fear might make them feel what I felt that morning. Helpless." Angela looked at her. "What do you want to do next?" Clara closed her eyes. "I want them to fix it, not just for me, for the next person waiting for a chair." Policy is supposed to protect the patient, but when efficiency becomes the goal, people become variables. Every rule that saves $1 can cost a heartbeat. That night, Clara wrote her thought before going to bed. They called it innovation. I call it ignorance with better math. She underlined the sentence twice. Next, Angela follows the paper trail even deeper and discovers proof that the company designed the algorithm not just to save time, but to cut costs by targeting the poorest patients.
Angela knew from experience that systems rarely told the truth out loud, but they always left it somewhere on paper. She started by filing an open records request. It took 2 weeks and 3 phone calls, but eventually she received an envelope stamped confidential, internal use only. Inside were 20 pages of fine print, contracts, performance charts, and quarterly reports from Mediflow to the clinic's parent company. The first line under Performance Overview made her chest tighten. Predictive scheduling reduced total dialysis hours by 19.4% among low-compliance patients, yielding significant cost savings. Angela whispered to herself, they called less care a savings. She kept reading. Another section described the Low Compliance Index, the same label her mother had been given. It read, patients identified as high cost and low likelihood of attendance may be deprioritized to optimize operational throughput. She circled the words deprioritized and throughput. They sounded like factory terms, not healthcare. That evening, Angela spread the documents across her mother's kitchen table. Clara watched quietly, sipping tea. Angela said, "Mama, this isn't a mistake. It's written right here. They built the system to treat people differently based on cost." Clara frowned. "I'm not surprised. We've been paying the cost for a long time. They just learned to call it progress." Angela nodded. "But this time, we can prove it." The next day, she showed the papers to Tessa. The nurse stared at them, shaking her head. "I had no idea. They told us the program would save time, not hours from people's lives." Angela said, "It does both, and they reward you for it. Look, right here. Employee performance bonuses tied to scheduling efficiency." Tessa's face hardened. "That's why management keeps pushing us to follow the system, even when we know it's wrong." She folded her arms. "This isn't medicine anymore. It's math in scrubs." Angela decided to send the documents to the local paper. The reporter she contacted had covered her earlier complaint. He was quiet for a long time as he read through the pages. Then he said, "Do you realize what you found?
This is a blueprint for discrimination. They literally designed software to cut care for people who cost more to serve. Angela exhaled. Then let's make them explain it.
3 weeks later, the story appeared on the front page. Leaked files show algorithmic bias in dialysis clinics. The article quoted the documents word for word, showing how Mediflow had used economic data to identify low-value patients, often seniors on public insurance, mostly Black and Latino. It went viral within hours. On the evening news, a company spokesperson appeared on camera. "Mediflow does not discriminate," he said carefully. "Our system optimizes scheduling to ensure fairness." When asked if the company would suspend the software, he smiled and said, "We're confident the data speaks for itself." Watching from her recliner, Clara muttered, "That's the problem. The data's been talking too long. Maybe it's time we talked back." Days later, an investigation was opened by the state's Department of Health. Angela was asked to testify. When she took the stand, she didn't sound angry, just tired. She said, "This isn't about code or computers. It's about people hiding behind them. My mother showed up. The system erased her because she was inconvenient. That's not innovation. That's neglect, written in digits instead of ink." The hearing room was silent for a moment. Then a lawmaker said quietly, "Thank you, Miss Johnson. We needed to hear that." That night, back at home, Clara opened her notebook and wrote in her careful hand. "They built the machine to count costs, not hearts, and it did the job perfectly." She paused, then added, "But paper can hide silence or carry truth, depending on who's holding the pen." Paper trails don't lie. They only wait to be read. When policy hides behind data, it takes one person brave enough to translate numbers back into names. Next, Angela and Clara realize the story isn't just local anymore, it's national. Across the country, families begin to speak out, and the company's silence starts to cost more than its savings.
The article changed everything. Within a week, Angela's phone began ringing nonstop. Some calls came from local reporters, others from families she had never met. One woman from Mississippi said her father had lost his dialysis spot twice in the same month because the computer thought he'd stopped showing up. A retired nurse from Detroit wrote, "Our clinic used Mediflow too. I tried to override the system when it removed a patient's name. I got written up for inefficiency." Angela started keeping a list of names. By the end of the second week, there were 47. Each one had a story just like her mother's. At the kitchen table, Clara watched her daughter scribbling notes across a yellow pad. "Baby, you can't help everybody," she said softly. Angela looked up. "Maybe not, but if they all tell the truth, they can't ignore us anymore." Clara smiled faintly. "That's how it always starts. One voice, then a chorus." The story spread to national news. The headline on one cable station read, "Algorithmic inequality. Are computers deciding who gets care?" Clara watched herself on TV for the first time. A clip from the local news interview she'd given weeks earlier. She looked tired but steady as she said, "Machines are fine for counting minutes, but they shouldn't decide who deserves another day." The anchor said, "The company behind the program now faces growing backlash from families and health officials." Clara turned to Angela. "I never thought my voice would travel this far." Angela smiled. "Sometimes the truth has better reach than Wi-Fi." In the following days, federal agencies announced they were reviewing predictive algorithms used in healthcare scheduling. Civil rights groups called for a ban on any model that used zip codes or insurance type to assign care priority. Meanwhile, Mediflow tried to calm the storm. The company released a statement,
We regret any misunderstanding of our product's purpose. Our mission is to make healthcare smarter, not selective." Angela read it aloud to her mother. Clara chuckled. "That's a fancy way of saying they got caught." Soon, reporters began asking to visit their home. Angela agreed to one interview with a national paper. The journalist asked, "What made you keep pushing when the system kept telling you no?" Angela answered simply, "Because my mother's kidneys don't understand bureaucracy." And Clara added, "And because showing up is what keeps us alive in every sense." The next Sunday at church, the pastor asked Clara to share her story. She stood at the front of the congregation, her small notebook in hand. "I used to think machines made things better," she began, "but I learned they only make things faster, even the wrong things." The room grew still. "When you let a computer decide who's dependable," she said, "you're not measuring commitment, you're measuring convenience." A murmur of agreement filled the pews. After service, people lined up to hug her. Some whispered their own stories: a missed appointment, a lost record, a doctor who trusted the computer more than the patient. By the time she got home, she had a small pile of handwritten letters tucked inside her Bible. That night, Angela sat at her desk, reading messages from around the country. One stood out. It came from a nurse in Arizona who wrote, "Because of you, our clinic suspended Mediflow. They said they're rewriting the algorithm with human review built in." Angela showed it to her mother. Clara smiled, tears in her eyes. "Maybe the system's finally learning its manners." Angela laughed. "Or maybe it's finally getting a human teacher." When injustice is called policy, it survives quietly. But when patterns turn into people, silence breaks. What began as one woman's missing appointment became a nationwide reckoning with the math of care. Before bed, Clara wrote in her notebook, "I was supposed to be invisible, a line of code in a quiet file." But the story spread faster than the silence. She closed the book and said softly, "One patient at a time is how systems change." Next, the movement reaches lawmakers. Angela and Clara traveled to testify in front of Congress, where their story helps shape the first national rule demanding human oversight in healthcare algorithms.
When the letter from Washington arrived, it felt unreal. Angela read it twice before saying anything. "Mama," she said slowly, "they want us to testify before Congress." Clara looked up from her chair. "Us?" Angela nodded. "They're holding hearings on AI bias in healthcare. They want you to tell your story." Clara smiled softly. After all these years, they finally want to hear from the patient. 2 weeks later, they flew to D.C. It was Clara's first time on a plane in nearly 20 years. She wore her best navy dress and carried her blue notebook in her purse. The hearing room was packed. Reporters, cameras, officials, and a row of company executives from Mediflow sitting stiffly behind polished nameplates. When it was her turn, Clara leaned toward the microphone. Her voice trembled for a moment, then steadied. "My name is Clara Johnson. I'm 70 years old. I've been on dialysis for 10. I don't understand algorithms, but I understand what it feels like to be erased by one." The room went silent. She opened her notebook, hands shaking slightly. "One morning, my name disappeared from the schedule. The machine said I wasn't coming. I was. The only reason I'm still here is because my daughter refused to believe a computer over her mother." She looked up at the lawmakers. "I'm not asking you to stop using technology. I'm asking you to remember what it can't measure: faith, effort, survival. Those things don't fit in spreadsheets." Angela spoke next. She showed the committee the company documents and the leaked contract. This system didn't make a mistake. It made a decision,
one that valued money over people. My mother almost paid the price for someone else's efficiency. A senator leaned forward. Ms. Johnson, what do you want Congress to do? Angela answered simply, make sure humans stay in charge of care. Machines should help, not decide. Applause rippled softly through the room. A week later, the hearings made national headlines. Congress weighs Human Oversight Act after dialysis denial case. Lawmakers proposed a bill requiring all healthcare algorithms to undergo bias audits and human confirmation before any patient care decision. The media started calling it Clara's Law. When Angela read that headline aloud, her mother smiled. I never thought I'd have a law with my name on it, she said. Angela laughed. You earned it the hard way, Mama.
Months passed, and the world began to move differently. Hospitals formed ethics committees. Clinics posted notices that said, all automated scheduling is subject to human review. Nurses were retrained to double-check AI recommendations. Patients began asking questions that once went unspoken. How was this decision made? Who programmed this? Can someone check it, please? It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. When the bill finally passed, Clara and Angela were invited back to D.C. for the signing. The president handed Clara a ceremonial pen and said, you reminded us that data isn't the same as dignity. Clara smiled. It's nice to be remembered for showing up. After the ceremony, they walked outside into the cool spring air. Cameras flashed, but Clara ignored them. She looked at her daughter and said, you know, Angela, we didn't fix everything, but we made them listen. Angela nodded. And that's how things start to heal. Clara squeezed her hand. It took a lifetime to teach the system that we exist. Maybe now it'll start teaching itself to care. Real change doesn't begin with code. It begins with people who refuse to stay quiet. Clara's story became more than a headline. It became a compass for fairness, pointing medicine back toward humanity. That night, before bed, Clara opened her notebook for the last time that trip. She wrote, who can fix it? The ones who still believe showing up matters. How can they fix it? By staying until the system remembers every name it erased. She underlined the last line twice and closed the notebook. Next, Clara returns home, back to the same clinic, the same chair, but a different world. The law bears her name, and the machine that once forgot her now greets her every week. A year later, Clara Johnson walked through the glass doors of the same dialysis clinic that had once erased her name. The smell of antiseptic and coffee was still the same. The humming machines still sang their slow, steady rhythm of life. But something small and important had changed. Above the front desk hung a new sign in bold blue letters. All patient schedules are verified by staff. No automated decisions. Clara smiled when she saw it. Well, she whispered, looks like the machine finally learned its manners. The receptionist, a new young woman, greeted her warmly. Good morning, Miss Johnson. Let's get you checked in. Clara handed over her card. The woman clicked a few buttons, then said cheerfully, all set. You're confirmed for your regular time, 7:30. Human confirmed and verified. Clara chuckled. Best phrase I've heard all year. As she sat down in her chair, Tessa, her nurse, walked over grinning. Can you believe it? Every schedule now gets double approval, ours and the patient's. They even call it the Clara Protocol. Clara laughed. I didn't mean to start a protocol. I just wanted my seat. Tessa nodded. You did more than that. You gave every patient the right to show up and be seen. While her treatment ran, Clara opened her notebook. On the first page, she'd written the same sentence years ago. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7:30 a.m., don't be late. She smiled softly. So many battles, all beginning with something that simple, showing up. Across the room, she noticed a woman with gray braids watching her. The woman looked nervous. Clara waved. "First week?" she asked. The woman nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I was scared the computer might cancel me too." Clara smiled. "Don't worry. It doesn't get the final say anymore." Later that day, as Angela helped her mother back home, they stopped by the small park near their apartment. The spring air was warm, and children were playing near the fountain. Angela said, "Mama, did you know the law they passed, your law, it's already changed protocols in more than 100 clinics?" Clara shook her head slowly. "Imagine that. All because one morning I refused to leave the lobby." Angela laughed. "That's how movements start, I guess, inside waiting rooms." Clara took a deep breath. "I used to think being dependable didn't matter. Turns out, it's what saved me."
That evening, she sat by her window, the notebook opened in her lap. The sun dipped below the rooftops, spilling gold across the pages. She began to write her final entry. "The system said I wouldn't come, but I came, every time, and now it knows my name again. They call it efficiency, I call it remembering." She paused, then added one more line. "A machine can schedule about it, but only people can keep a promise." She closed the notebook gently, a small smile on her face. Clara Johnson's story began with a missing appointment and ended with a law. Her fight wasn't just about one clinic, one computer, or one mistake. It was about a truth bigger than technology, that every life deserves to be accounted for, not just calculated. Today, every dialysis center using predictive scheduling must include a human verification step, a rule known nationwide as the right to show up. The camera would fade to Clara's dialysis chair, empty now, sunlight spilling across it. On the small table beside it sits her notebook, its cover worn but proud. Compassion can't be automated. Fairness still needs a face. If this story moved you, share it. Someone you love may be trusting a system that needs reminding to care. Subscribe to Older Black Person Stories, When Data Meets Dignity, for more true stories about courage, justice, and the quiet power of showing up.